the Microsoft Team. Once you are able to log into Microsoft Team account on the given user ID and password from our side. So once you log in, you'll get a screen like this. Let me share that screen to you. So this kind of screen you'll be able to see, and you'll be able to see only this team. So tools and tester batch 1 is the icon which you will get under this team. So now I'll be telling you how to join the classes every day. So you don't require a link. Once you are able to download Team, install on your desktop, and log in using the user ID and password, which we'll be sharing to you, this screen will come. In case you already use Microsoft Team, then you have to log out and log in with this particular password, user ID and password. So you'll be so every day what you have to do is you have to just click this calendar, and in the calendar you'll get this kind of option. So there will be already the scheduled program, and you have to just click it and then click on to the join option. This is one way of joining. Other is that if you go to the team and click the tools and tester batch 1. So here also, so you have to look at this, that particular Ashok Kumar has scheduled a meeting training on tools and tester. You have to click this and then join. So if you click this, you'll get a joining option here, and then you have to join. All right. So that way you'll be able to join the meeting. So the one option is that through calendar you join the meeting. Other option is that you go to the team and general, and here you'll see this, and you can join using this. Since the this meeting has already started, so you can directly join from here. But if someone else has started a new meeting, so anybody of you can actually join a new, start a new meeting by pressing this. So don't confuse. If there are more than one meeting going on here, so don't be confused. You have to always look at a meeting scheduled by Ashok Kumar, and then you have to click this link, and then after that you have to join. Otherwise, you may join a wrong meeting, which is not good. So that is advice. And better use calendar. From calendar, you'll be able to join the meeting. In case these two things are not working for you, for example, you have not got user ID and password, then the other option is to use the link which we have shared. But we will discourage you to use the link, all because once you are able to log in using the user ID and password, you'll be able to access this team. And in general options, so there is a many features, like for example, if you click this post, so whatever is going on will be visible here. For example, if I close this meeting, so the recording of the meeting will be visible here. So you can just click the recording and go through the recording. I'll also be posting certain files. For example, I have posted the browser of tools and tester, which is here, tools and tester.pdf. This is a browser which I have posted onto. So I'll be posting various reading material for you. So whatever copy of PPT we get from experts, we will be posting here. So you'll be able to access those documents. You can download those documents and store into your computer and read further. We'll also be uploading the recordings here. So we'll be just uploading. So for example, this recording of inaugural session has been posted by one of our member, Ravi Mathur. So you can access this recording, right? So let me go back to the files. Okay, and then class material will be, whatever class material we'll create, will be posting here. So this is where you'll get all the material related to particular training. And then there is an option of assignment. So this is a place where we will create assignment for you because we will be evaluating your performance. So every week we'll try to give you some assignment. You have to do that assignment. So assignment will be of two types. One assignment will be wherein you have to attempt that assignment using pen and paper at your liberty, at your home or in office. And once you have completed, you have to scan that using your mobile or any scanner and upload onto the team itself. So those uploaded assignments will be visible to the trainers like us and not to other students. So it is a space given for all the trainees wherein they will see their assignment and they will be able to upload the assignment if it is like that. In case it is a quiz kind of assignment, so you will be able to attempt the quiz here onto the Microsoft team. And whenever we'll create any assignment, you get notification under this post options. And if you have enabled notification on your device will also get notification, right? And you can have any conversation here. For example, if I just say, good afternoon. So it will come to all of you, that will all be able to see this good afternoon message. So if you want to communicate with all the trainees along with the trainers, you can write onto this post. In case you want to address this one person, for example, if I put @ and then I can choose the name. For example, if I choose Ashish Vyas, who is one of the trainee, and then write something, test. In fact, it will be visible to him. This test message he can reply to. And all the activity which you will be doing onto the team, you can go to the activity tab on top of this here and see that whatever your activities are there will be listed here. For example, for me, all those attendance report are also visible because so we have set up this meeting. So every day attendance is also recorded and those are available to us. It may not be available to you, but it will be available to the organizer of the meeting like us. So we can see the attendance, who joined when. So this gives an Excel sheet. It will give your name, when you joined, when you left the meeting, when you joined again, if you joined same session again. So it gives me a attendance list. And as you are aware that attendance is in this training is compulsory. So and there is a threshold. If you are not able to attend the threshold level of training, then perhaps a certificate completion of the certificate may not be available to you. So I request that please do join the meeting as far as possible. For some time, if you are not able to join, it is okay because about 70% attendance would be compulsory. So we will evaluate based on that. So only on 30% occasion you can choose not to join the session. But in case you have missed any session, the recording of the session will be made available on the team platform itself. So you can log in and look at those recordings. So record for seeing the recording under the post every day, recording would be available. We will also try to upload that particular recording onto the file section for easy access, but then and there the recordings would be available here. We will also try to upload, for example, if you look at this is a recording available here. So similar, this is a test recording which we had done one day. So you can also kind of record, access to, you can access these recordings whenever you want to. So these are some of the features of this particular Microsoft team, especially for training purpose. If you are member of any other team, this will not be available. This is a kind of a team for education purpose or training purpose. So in case your kids are studying and they are using team, these features would be available to them also. So with this introduction, I would now hand over the dais to my DDG, Sunil Kumar sir, for the first session of this particular training course. So over to you, sir.
Ashok, just one small question.
Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
This, my username and password, I think it is not, although I'm a participant, but it is not communicated to me. So can you help in that? Because as
So,
you said, we should log in through username password. That's why.
right. So today, all the login, user ID and password will be emailed to all of you, and you can also ping on the WhatsApp group. So please wait till evening today, and you'll receive an email. Whatever email you have given during the registration process, we'll try to send one-to-one email, because I cannot send a bulk email. It contains user ID and password. So one-to-one email will be sent by Sunit most probably today. By end of today, you ping on the WhatsApp group in case you have not received. So then we can also share that through WhatsApp, through other medium if required. Any other query or question before we start the session? If before I hand it over to Sunil sir. Okay, if there is no more questions, so sir, I mean, over to you for the session.
Yeah, thank you, Ashok. It's really wonderful to address such a big gathering in virtual platform though. So I'm seeing many friends who know much better than me, like Sudesh is there, I'm seeing, and Ashok is there, and so many officers are there. So I'm a bit enamored with the presence and the expertise that is available in the audience. So I hope the next 1 month we'll have a lot many interactions, many days, 2 interactions, because Ashok has tried to include as many percentages as possible from the ecosystem of tools and manufacturers, operators, NEMs, etc. So it is going to be a fruitful session. And going forward, we also feel that we will be, like Sunil just told, that we will try to have a physical session. Of course, physical session will be 20 to 30 participants. By that time, we hope to gather some tools and testers in NTI itself, of many planning tools, many drive test tools, so that there can be some hands-on training. So that is the agenda or the roadmap that we have for the future. So right now, we will have to do with this virtual session that we are going to have. I hope all of you are able to see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is what we are going to discuss for the next 45 minutes to 1 hour, or maybe more if discussions are there. Most of you will be familiar with whatever I am telling. So it is basically we would like to brush up a few of the things which you would have come across in the past service or during your training or even before. So there is nothing new that I may be sharing with you, maybe a few tidbits here and there. So just to brush up so that in the next 4 weeks, you will be able to ask the right questions, or you will be prepared to the areas of exposure that we are going to get. So that is the primary purpose of today's discussion. Actually, no, I'm tempted to share one small experience which I had when I joined the micro project early in the 90s. When I joined Mangalore as ADD micro project, a controversy was going on there. So the controversy was that a microwave digital broadband link was engineered from Mangalore to Bangalore. It was having a definite number of hops, and the first station after Mangalore was supposed to be a place called Bellipadi, which was already an existing repeater station in the analog microwave band. But before the equipment orders are placed, some enterprising SD microwave survey, that survey division was exclusive in those days. So a very enterprising fellow, very knowledgeable fellow, he wanted to do a physical survey of the station, because those days the one hop is around 40 kilometers. So we will not be able to see visually. So he just wanted to go and visit and see with the telescopes and other things, whether he is able to see this Mangalore tower from there, or at least he will have some confidence after going there, whether he will be able to have the hope clear from Mangalore to Bellipadi, because it is quite substantial distance. Because analog microwave being in a different band, things are different, so digitally it may not be same. So when he went there, he saw some hill nearby in the same direction as that of Mangalore. So he was wondering what has happened. Because if this hill is there so nearby and the tower at Bellipadi was hardly 20 meters or so, how that is possible to clear that? So then he went down to those days, his contour maps were there, paper maps, survey maps of the geographical survey of India maps. He went down to the map and there is no hill there. So whatever hill was there visually, that was not there in the map actually. So he was wondering then actually those days they had two sets of maps. One was from the British times, one was prepared by the Indian team. So he went down to the next, the original survey was made by the British maps. So when he went to the Indian maps, then he says the hill is there nearby. And if that hill is there is no light on site. So this was told to the director project and DE project, and there was a big hangama. And now this system is not clear, and the equipments are about to be ordered. So it had led to an establishment of a new repeater station at Matadharka, I remember, because I was, as ADT, I was in charge of marking the true north of that particular tower. That itself was an experience, marking the true north with theodolite and all those things. So I just want to see the importance of tools. Now these maps, of course, are part of the digital maps. We have got all kinds of microwave link engineering is now kids play. There is no maps to be spread across a table and somebody just drawing a line just to see what is the AMSL of each point, whether the frontal clearance will be there at each point. So it was a very risky thing, and those engineers really used to really worry whether what we are doing is correct, whether when you really orient the antenna, whether signal will reach at the other station or not. So that was a very, very challenging task. And this kind of mistakes sometimes do happen. Of course, due to the talented young engineer there, that was avoided. At least during the PO time, one extra repeater could be ordered and that link could be successfully established. So these are the, evolution of RF engineering that has happened from during those days. Because even before that, the Japanese engineers used to come to India to do in the 70s, they used to come for the foreign engineers used to come and do what survey called balloon survey, because they will be putting a meter at the top of a balloon and then they will be filling hydrogen and then they will really transmit at the antenna height where the antenna is supposed to mount. And then they will be checking whether signal is really there or not the other end. So that kind of precise engineering used to be done. So these tools and testers have actually evolved from those days to current. And I don't know, I will not even risk a prediction into the future because the way artificial intelligence and machine learning, etc., are going, I don't think any tools and testers will be ever there in the shape, size and shape that we are seeing today. Even today, the drive test is getting obsolete because of the self-optimizing networks and other things. So these tools and testers is a very evolving scenario, and it is a very interesting scenario as well. Like I was telling in my opening remark during the inaugural session, that more you learn about tools and testers, every button you learn the technology. The same ditto with even today's drive test tool or planning tool. If somebody is thorough in operating that, then he's a master of the cellular technology. So that is a few things which I want to say to set the tone of our course. So I hope all of you will engage yourself, and I also request on behalf of my team, of course, everybody will be knowing Ashok was recently conducted one very successful training program on 5G certification. So whatever feedback you want to convey, please do convey to us. For example, if you are having an issue with NADA, any points are there, if you tell us, we will communicate to these OEMs of the tools and testers, and they will come prepared with the answer. Just one second. The anime session probably later. So this feedback you please take that any issues which you are having with the existing tools and testers, you are free to convey those points to us. We will be compiling and tell them these points, feedback or additional information that you want. And many of them have expressed their keenness for that also, so that the engagement will be more fruitful. So coming to today's session, the wireless network is very different from a conventional telecom network. The conventional network, the role of the engineering or the optimization post-commissioning, subsequent to the commissioning, is far less when we compare with a wireless network. Wireless network, of course, implementation itself is complex, as we would see. But even after implementation, during the operation itself, a new building coming up somewhere, the traffic pattern changes, the new housing society has come, a lot of customers are there. So a new highway has come or a new bridge has come. All those things will change to the total. Then there will be a necessity to sometimes recast the wireless network to a substantial way. So optimization engineers have got a much bigger role, not only physical, but even technically involved role in a cellular network. Not only one more aspect of a cellular network is that it's always continuously evolving. You have a VIP coming there, you will put a repeater there. If you have got a 5-star hotel which is going to host a international conference, you may immediately go and commission an IBS there. The moment you commission an IBS, RF environment around that gets changed. So you may have to re-optimize that. So the wireless network is something which you cannot fill it and shut it kind of a network. It is always evolving. Always it has to reinvent, redesign, and re-optimize.
Sir, may I intervene? Sir, are you on the first slide or you have moved out of it?
Yeah, I am in the first slide.
Then okay.
In the first slide. So now I'll be going into that. So with the background, and now you are seeing the second slide, agenda slide.
Yeah. I can see. I thought it was struck up. So please go ahead.
So that is why this agenda, there's a need of RF planning to start with. Then I will be sharing some of the general concepts surrounding the RF network, because RF network, as you see, constitutes some 60 to 70% of the investment of an operator. So it is a huge investment. So, and even at building up a site, the infrastructure itself is around, say, 25 to 30 lakhs. On top of that, you are putting your radio equipment, and it is very difficult to change a tower which is constructed. So it has to be a very intricate affair, judging and RF planning. So there are many choices that are available to you in terms of antenna, in terms of macro, micro, nano kind of any architecture, in terms of backhaul. So in terms of the location of the tower from the view of future evolution. So many things choice are there. So we will be discussing those things. And then, of course, the basic fundamental of a link budget. You need to have a balanced link budget. Your communication has to reach the tower, and the signal has to reach your mobile. This has to be always balanced. So these are the some concepts which we will be discussing. And we will not be able to discuss many tools, but at least a planning tool, what are the inputs that are required for a planning tool, and what is the expected output from a planning tool. So this we'll be discussing in today's session. So RF planning is one thing which is very key in designing the macro and micro cellular networks. So we need to, because as you know, now the data earlier, it used to be all about voice communication. Voice and SMS used to define a cellular network. But now the experience that a customer gets in the data is also important. So this has added an entirely new dimension to the RF planning space. Of course, with the 5G coming, much more dimensions are getting added. So that is the story for a different day. And then the goal is to achieve the optimum use of the resources. As I said, a lot of investment goes to the RF network, and it is a more or less an inflexible investment that we are doing, unlike a core network which is in a few cities which we are installing, whereas RF network is spread across, in fact, lakhs of locations, and changing the location is not a kid stuff, including local body permissions involved, apart from moving of the assets and all. So initially, when you are planning, you have to get it right. And of course, every operator has got their own spectrum allotted, so we have to play within that, and there is always a budget which is planned. You need to also address the capacity, because today you plan something and next year you roll out. Next year, how many customers are going to add to my network? How much, what kind of handsets they're going to use, and how much traffic they are going to evolve, and what is the kind of the revenue structure in that day? All will have to be somewhat using thumb rule or scientific rule, whatever we have to imagine today, and we have to plan. every environment is different, urban environment to rural, macro to micro. So everywhere this environment hilly to flat terrains, all those things are required, and your planning also has to be future proof. Suppose you go to a city or a small tier 3 city and put one tower right in the middle. That may not be a right location after 2 years when you want to add 2 more sites to that. Maybe you would like to have a slightly spread out structure, and the first site maybe actually become redundant site. So we may have to think many things. You put it on a hillside, very happy that everything is covered. The moment you put the next site, it will become interferer. So we have to keep those things, and also the optimization cost. You save a lot of money today by having a hill cost, but tomorrow the optimization will become a nightmare. So to summarize, you have got coverage objectives, you have got capacity requirements, you have got QoS targets to meet. You know, call crop is it has become a subject for parliament debates in our country. So QoS in a very competitive environment, in a very service sensitive, quality sensitive clientele is very important. Then site limitations. You may like to take a site in a particular location, but if the owner refuses, what will you do? And where the owner is ready, may have a particular tower only may be feasible. So the site itself will give you many challenges, availability constraints, etc. And of course, OPEX and being future proof, I already have discussed. So with that background, let me come to certain points, certain background points to set the agenda, to set the thought process in your mind, how things have evolved. Of course, we are on the threshold of 5G. The world has already seen many 5G launches in the non-standalone version. Standalone is being seen now. So in India, of course, LTE is ruling the roost even today. So we have seen the spectral efficiency growing by leaps and bounds. What do you mean by spectral efficiency? You mean by the number of the quantum of information that you can pack in a given spectral width. So that can be increased in many ways, which you will be examining in a nutshell. So from GSM, it was 0.032 kind of a thing. Even after using a frequency reuse of 4, you can have a frequency reuse of 3 sites. Every 3 sites you can reuse, or you can reuse at every 4 sites, or you can be every 5. So that's up to you. Depending upon the considerations that you have. So here, if you take use of 4, then you have got a spectral efficiency of 0.032. So GPR is also similar to GSM 2G concept 4 in Edge also. So there, slightly technology has improved. And then WCDMA you are using at every tower, the 5 megahertz that you have. Of course, their scrambling code will be different, but the frequency is used in every sector. So same thing with HSDPA, with LTE 2x2, and then you have got 4x4, and of course we can have 8x8 also. But by that time, now 5G is coming, so I don't think many deployments are there in the world beyond 4x4 for LTE. And 5G, I think it's around 30 BPS per hertz. It has again doubled. So this kind of evolution is happening on one side on the spectral efficiency. So you have got many methods. One is you change the technology, or you give more resources in terms of TDMA or in terms of bandwidth. Now, for example, in 2G world, we were very happy with 6.2 megahertz or 10 megahertz or something like that. We were quite happy with those kind of resources. Now in 5G, what is available? People are talking about 400 megahertz in standard itself. And then with the carrier aggregation much more. One carrier itself can be as big as 400 megahertz if you talk about wave. So from 5 megahertz to in 5G, you have got as small as 5 megahertz to as big as 400 in 5G. And in 2G, we were in terms of 200 kilohertz onwards, ARF sales were being used. So this is more giving more bandwidth and adding more spectrum bands into the mobile sector is definitely one of the big ways. Handling more spectrum itself with your technology. So that is one dimension of the evolving technology. Then, of course, the closer you reuse, of course, then you will have quality considerations. Then channel coding, we can use and higher order modulation from QPSK to 16 PSK to 32 QAM, and then 64 QAM, 128. So like the higher of modulation, you can pack in more information, and then of course increase the number of channels. No, modulation has reached almost high level. That is why now we are adding more and more channels. So your packing is in one channel, then you add more channels in MIMO. So like that, ultimately we have come to the basis of this formula is often discussed right from our college days. Even now, this is a kind of a benchmark for that, because it says that information capacity is ultimately a product of bandwidth and signal quality. So basically, these two are the things which I want to say, that ultimately any RF planning boils down to controlling the class, actually taking class. Yeah. So controlling the signal to noise ratio is the fundamental role. Other things can be managed maybe by artificial intelligence or database optimization through self-optimization network. There are multiple techniques, but ultimately, if you are able to control, if you're increasing the channel bandwidth, and if you are able to improve your source, and this improving the signal can be in multiple ways. For example, people will talk of single interference management. So sometimes from the noise, if you are able to differentiate the noise, you filter some information out of the noise itself, that will add to the signal. So that itself, the technology is growing in that direction also. So by using this formula is never violated. So ultimately, any planning tool or any optimization efforts are to improve. And another technique to improve or to augment your systems are to use multiple bands. So now if you just see here, you have got different choices of spectrum. You have got typically a lower band spectrum, and then you have got something like a mid-band spectrum. Now, of course, in 5G scenario, we call it as lowest band, means less than 1 GHz. Then 1 to 6 is known as mid-band, and beyond 6 is known as the high band. So you use these three different bands for different purposes. The lower band is the most precious spectrum. So that is used for giving the coverage, at least voice coverage if you give, and then a little bit of data capacity. There, the bandwidth available, for example, in the spectrum option that we have got for the 700 megahertz spot, which is also called the DD or digital dividend spectrum, whatever it's called, because it was released from the analog television era and given to digital. So there we have got hardly, I think, 45 plus 45 kind of a thing. So very limited spectrum is available in the lower segment. Then we have got this mid segment, you have got 1800 and 2.6, etc. Many bands are there, but the tremendous advantage given by the lower bands. Now 10 dB advantage is there compared to a 2.6 to 800 kind of a sport, and 3 dB advantage is there between 800 and 2.6. This is giving a wide coverage advantage for the lower bands. But what is happening is that when you deploy, you use multiple bands. For example, if you go to the Geo kind of a network, they use exclusively 4G coverage. They have got a spectrum band in 800, then 1800, and then 2300. So they will give the voice coverage, voltage coverage in the lower bands, and then they will give the capacity, the throughputs that is required for the data customer in the higher band. So whomsoever is near to the tower, they will give the higher bands, and whomsoever is going farther away, they will be sharing. So by intelligently managing the different bands, the multi-band operation is very key to give a good QoS to the customer. So this option is a very, very important, the managing the multiple bands in the spectrum scenario. And ultimately, when you look at it, all the technology evaluation, this slide, which basically I want to drive one point only, the whole higher modulation, everything happens in to the 10% of the users who are having excellent SNR ratio of, say, better than 15 dB or so. For example, if you take the GPRS to edge evaluation, evolution. Yet we had 9 modulation schemes. You say MCS 9 is the highest one, which will give you throughput of say 384 kbps all those days. That is actually applicable only when your SNR is better than something like a 25 dB. So only to the excellent SNR customers, there only this MCS 9 or whatever technology we're using, the QAM and all, 64 QAM, 128 QAM, all those things are applicable here. So unless you improve this yellow shaded area, you don't get improvement in the throughput. But of course, by doing the radio resources management, what is happening in the Node-Bs and other things, you always find out that instant in which a particular mobile is having a better RF environment, you push maximum throughput, maximum modulation signal during that time and try to increase the average throughput of the network. But this again lays importance to the fact that the best optimized network for a given number of sites can carry much more data because the SNR value will be important. For this is also visible during the voice this thing also when the AMR was introduced, adaptive multi-rate. There the AMR half rate, which is not compromising on the quality of the voice, is actually works better when the quality is very good. So better optimized network will carry a lot of AMR HR traffic. This can be seen even in our 2G kind of a network, where an operator, if he is optimizing the network very well, will be able to drive a lot of half rate AMR traffic. So he will release a lot of resources for his other channels for better utilization of resources and also data time source can be given. So this is a very key aspect. And coming to interference. So this is all about core channel interference and then your adjacent channel interference. So you need to worry about the core channel interference is the same channel getting interference. So the golden rule is that you have to be always by a 9 dB of interference. So you have to lead the signal by 9 dB. That is a basic principle. And in terms of adjacent channel interference, the interference can be not more than 9 dB stronger than you. So this is the two basic fundamental principles of interference. The core channel has to be 9 dB below, and the adjacent channel cannot be stronger than you by more than 9 dB. So these are the two fundamental points which I want to refresh your knowledge. Maybe you might have heard. So ultimately, this summarizes that there is a Shannon theorem says is a limit of this one, and with all this modulation during the technology evolution, we are trying to be as close as possible to that limit by having various techniques. But the other techniques which we can seemingly bypass the Shannon, but it's actually not bypassing, is to have the MIMO, because you multiply the number of channels. So Shannon theory tells about one channel, so then you have multiple channels. So MIMO 2 cross 2 MIMO means 2 channels are there. 4 cross 4, 4. 64 T64 are in the LTE and 5G. That means there are so many channels. So there will be 8 or 9 channels for every mobile. Like that, you will have multiple mobiles, multiple channels. So this is one technique that we have for increasing the channels. Then coordinated multi-point. We have got a slide on that. This is there a technique which is there from 4G onwards, and of course small cells. The importance of small cells is always very, very important. Unless, like I said, the best signal is near to you, within close proximity. So you take the base station to the customer, to the user equipment, to the mobile hands by hanging the antenna right inside the building. So that's why we have got in-building systems which are very key. Whatever throughput that we are claiming in various technologies will be available only to those customers, particularly who are there in the IBSs. So these are some concepts, and then this paired and unpaired spectrum is another concept, because every spectrum is divided and classified internationally into either as a paired spectrum or unpaired. This most of you must be familiar, but I just wanted to have a level playing field. So to an equal understanding by all the participants. So this is already defined. So suppose you say that 700 megahertz, which is called band 28 in the LTE band nomenclature. So that is already defined by the ITU. international bodies. It is an FDD spectrum. Its uplink may start from approximately say 700 to 740. Then there will be a guard band of 5 megahertz. Then there will be some 762, so 805, something like that. So that 45 uplink and 45 downlink separately is already predefined. So similarly, there are in 800 and 900 all FDD. In 1800 is FDD. Up to 2100 all bands are FDD bands. Beyond that comes the domain of the unpaired bands. So where the new technology of TDD, because earlier all the communication used to be two-way communications. So it was basically a balance. Traffic used to be symmetric. So that is why we always have such kind of band definitions. But when the digital started dominating, then people understood that this traffic is not always symmetric. Most was downlink dominated, but now since a lot of very highly capable mobile have come and due to various other applications, the uplink is also increasing. But this ratio can vary from site to site because of the usage pattern at the given location. So, and we will be able to configure independently how many subcarriers or resources are required in the downlink and uplink. The ratio can be configured. So this is the flexibility that is available for unpaired spectrum, but it is slightly more complicated to implement. That's why initially it was not taking off. But once the technology configured that, particularly transmitter and receiver has to operate in the same frequency band, it leads to much more coordination between transmitter and receiver, because you have to know the channel conditions in both ways simultaneously. So that is why the TDD kind of a spectrum is there. So LTE initially took off in MT. Now all the new technologies are coming in. TDD time division duplex. Same time division is used in both ways by having the time separately used. Same frequency domain is used in both ways. So broadband services are symmetric. So this relevance of TDD has become more. So overall, if you see, the RF planning has got many constituents. One is the spectrum available to you, and most importantly, what is the demand that is there for you, how many customers, as I said, from marketing inputs or whatever, which area is to be covered, how much traffic is likely to come from there. You have to target a road rail, but at what level you need to cover. You need to have an excellent coverage, or at least a voice kind of a supporting kind of a coverage. So this kind of different objectives has to be set. Then what is the spectrum that is available to you, of course, and how much money you have got, how many sites you can afford. Then you have to optimally place those sites in a strategic way. And then with the basic link budget, you can understand how many sites will be required for a given kind of this kind of objective is there. And I want to have SLH throughput of 2 Mbps. I want to have a SLH throughput of only 5 to 10 Mbps. Based that kind of input, if you tell the link budget, it will tell you this is kind of the cell radius that you are looking. Then from cell radius, you can find out cell area, and then you will be able to find out approximately how many sites. So this kind of an idea the planner will get just a link budget. Then of course digital maps. So nowadays we have got maps of even 5-meter resolution, and earlier we used to manage a 50-meter resolution, then 25-meter came, and then 5-meter, and then we have got now 3D maps of big cities also for. Then you have got a plethora of planning tools available to you. So using all these tools, then you can give all these inputs. We will be able to have kind of an engineer. And then of course, for a very good planning, if you are expanding on your current network, you can use the existing node locations, what is the traffic there, so you know how much congestion is there, so you need more sites, more carriers, more spectrum, and what is interference value which you are suffering right now. So that also can be a very good input, so that the planning tools nowadays are very intelligent. You will be able to plan a correct network with that kind of an input. So this most of you must be familiar, and most of you would have heard. And after some time, maybe we can have a small 2 minutes break where it will be more interactive. So you can post some questions or some discussion points. So this kind of boring one-way lecture can be a bit broken. After this slide, we'll have 2 minutes break maybe. So basically, a link budget is kind of, you are transmitting at a particular ARP. Then at the end, you have got a feeder cable loss. So this is a BTS top you transmit. Then you suffer some cable loss. Earlier, you used to have a feeder cable right from the top tower to the top. Nowadays, you have collocated, so you may not have this much. Then you have got antenna gain, and that means a directive gain basically. Then you have got the path loss. So from the mobile to the antenna, the path loss that you encounter. So this will be more for the higher frequencies, less for the low frequencies. That is why we have got fantastic coverage at the lower bands. Then we have got the penetration loss, like if you are sitting inside a building, then you suffer the wall loss. If you like 5-star hotels, you have got multiple walls in the conference hall. You may have wooden paneled this thing. You don't have open windows, so it varies. So penetration loss is a factor. Then foliage loss. This is particularly more in higher frequencies, like when you talk about MM waves and all. That have that will then body, where you keep in your, whether you keep it in pocket or you keep it in your wallet or whatever it is. So certain body block loss will be there. Then slow fade, the fading margins. So always it was continuously varying and particularly has been fading margin will be there. So you have to keep some margin for the signal to vary, and then interference margin will be there, and then rain. So you give enough margins for uncertain factors. So there are certain factors which are specified margins. Then you have got unspecified margins where we don't know for sure how much is, but you know for sure that something will always be there. So these uncertain margins are also there, and certain factors are also there. So considering all those losses that you encounter down the way, you need to beat the reception sensitivity level of the handset. So that's your target. You need to certain level you need to reach, maybe 102 dBm, for example, if in 2G, and 123 or something for the 3G, and maybe in 4G it is slightly higher at 125, etc. So sensitivity of the handset is also improving, but there is a target to be met, and there is a maximum radiation level that you cannot transmit beyond that because of WBC guidelines, or you are on EMF issues. You have got a limit of transmission here. You have got a target to meet here. Similarly, in the uplink side also, you have got a maximum transmission that is possible, say 2 watt or something, for that is possible. And then you have got here, this is limited by even your battery capacity also. The more power you transmit, then the less battery time that you have, backup time. So then you have got similar losses, and you have got a, of course, this base stations are much more sensitive. Their sensitivity is much higher, at least by 10 dB. They are better than the mobile, but still they have got a target to meet. So both the downlink, uplink, you need to meet the target. So this is all about the link budget. So you have arrived at the maximum path loss that you can arrive at, and then you know you can derive your D, your diameter of the coverage from this, and you will be able to approximately assess. So in a rural urban area, you have different antenna heights. Rural, you keep a 60-meter tower. Urban, you may have a 30-meter antenna height. So depending upon all those things, your path loss will be different.
Sir, one small question, sir.
Urban rural area, and you are.
Sir,
So,
one small question, sir.
Yeah, so I'm breaking. So now let us have a little bit of discussions now, so that to break the monotony. Yeah, tell me.
So this body loss is different from body block loss?
No, it's the same. Body loss is body block loss only, but just to keep a margin there, because just to keep that uncertainty, we are keeping in the link budget. When you calculate, you keep some 1 dB, 2 dB like that, so that you cover up your link margin is more realistic. So any other points? So from whatever we have discussed today, so some discussion can be had, not only questions. Even if you want to express some opinion, it's fine. And you can have a small tea also, by the way.
So So any question from anyone? So sir has, given a break for question. So any of you can open your mic or write into the chat box, whatever option is good for you. So please make the class interactive so that you're able to understand. And
Yeah.
is there any question from any one of you?
Sir, may I, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir,
Yeah.
Reliance Jio is having three frequencies, 800, 800 and 2.6 gigahertz, sir. Sir, suppose a call is established with 800 and the handset comes in the boundary of 1.800. This frequency will change automatically, or some break may happen.
That actually depends on many things. For example, if they have got first of all, there is a handset capability.
Okay.
So this handset capability will be known to the network during the initial interrogation, like system information messages the network gives to the handset, and handset also communicates back to system what are my capabilities. That can be in terms of spectrum, it can be on the codecs that are available, many things are there. So the resources will be allotted by the handset only, by the network to the handset only based on the capability of the handset. That is number one. Number two, the second feature is the carrier aggregation. So generally, even though carrier aggregation is a much discussed topic, many operators have not implemented because we have got so many customers now. So there is hardly any possibility of giving a chunk of spectrum cutting across two different bands to a customer, because you have got already thousands of customers being served under the same cell. So everybody is asking so much. There is a spectrum asset is very scarce for the customer. If carrier aggregation is there, then you can do. Otherwise, you can always hand over through a normal handover procedure. But what is happening? 1800 is a cell. 800 is also a different cell. Basically, all are different cells. So a normal handover algorithm will work there, even without any calibration, things like that. A normal algorithm also will work. So suppose you move away from the site. First, you may be covered from an 1800. Then you may first you may be covered from 2300. Then you may get covered in a 1800 and vice versa. Like that. So handover will take care of that.
Okay, because there will be three frequencies and basically three virtual networks overlaying each other.
Actually, multi-band is a very complex scenario. So it is optimization is also very challenging. Okay. Like even when we started rolling out our network with 1800 world band, there used to be a lot of complaints of similar kind of issues are there. So managing a concentric cell, signaling is always like 2G we have at a BCCH. So all the signaling will be done at a lower band, and you will be managing the resources in both the bands, and you have to manage this kind of handover between different bands. It's a very complex thing, so it may require a lot of optimization and tweaking the parameters, but it happens.
Okay, thank you.
That's why nowadays is self-optimized network. Manually, these things are very difficult. But in self-optimized networks, by the same NEM or by third party, this kind of tweaking is done, parametric tweaking is done very efficiently. So that's why now the call drops, every operator I think is able to, the try targets are very easily met. People are having call drop rate of 0.32, etc. at many places except where there's overshooting. Yeah. Any other points?
Yeah, hello, I can.
Okay, good. So let us continue. So foliage loss, which we are discussing, this is mainly applicable for a 5G kind of a situation. Then tree, 2 trees, 3 trees, everything contributes to the foliage loss. So this is another aspect which will become predominant in and penetrating the walls. As I told you, multiple walls. Like earlier, I have read somewhere that you will be able to have a proper coverage if you are able to read a newspaper without a light in the room. So it's a very thumb rule. So if you are able to sit in a room and read a newspaper without a light during the daytime, so that means that the outside signal is able to penetrate. So that much loss is there. So it is something very just for an idea. This kind of explanations are given, and also the angle of incidence. So this is a very peculiar thing. Many times people will say that I am living right under the bottom of the tower. Still, I don't have coverage. So this angle of incidence is also, even if you have got a tower right on the top of the building.
Sir, there is one
but
raised
it
hand.
is very
if you like
difficult to
to
connect.
answer.
Yeah. So
there is a raised hand by
that?
SR Bhaskar. Bhaskarji, if you can ask the question.
Yeah. I have one question about your last slide on 5G connection. You can go to the last slide.
So your voice is not clear. If you can speak near to the mic.
Hello.
Bhaskarji, can you speak louder and near to the mic?
Yeah. Hello. Now you can see. My voice is clear to you. Hello.
Yeah, it's better.
You just go to the last slide of 5G.
This is
5G.
Polish laws.
You just go to the last slide. You have shown the on 5G. Where you have told the penetration loss. Yeah, you can see the penetration loss. You have told penetration loss can be in the building or inside the room or inside the hall. So I want to know what is the procedure or what is the system so that we can improve in the rooms for signal. Improve the signal.
Penetration loss cannot be improved. Yeah, I got your point.
Can't be improved.
Penetration loss is it is there. Yeah.
Actually, I
got your point.
Is there any possibility to improve? Hello.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
So,
I want to know, is there any possibility to improve the penetration loss in the in this conference room or something like that?
Yeah. Bhaskar, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So penetration loss is a fixed given thing. You can't change that. So suppose a customer is sitting in a conference hall in a 5-star hotel and there is a 30 dB penetration loss. It is there. You can't improve that. So now how to serve that customer? So there are 2-3 ways to serve the customer. If the customer is important, that building is important, you have to provide an IBS there. That is the number one best solution, but high capital investment. Or this IBS can be based on a micro BTS or it can be based on repeater. That is a different issue. But IBS or a repeater is the one solution. Second solution is that we provide a macro BTS outside. Because as I said in this picture, the incident angle is very important. So if you are tackling this site from a far away place, the incident angle also will not be parallel to that, and there will be a penetration loss. But if you are coming straight from a low height tower here, you will be able to penetrate better. So a closer site outside or an IBS or a repeater, these are the only solutions which are available. Otherwise, penetration loss you can't. That is a given thing. The building is it's an RF characteristic. Or another thing is that if you are serving by a high band site, for example, if you take an operator who is having only a 2600 coverage here, maybe he should think of adding if he is having a spectrum, he should add a 900 megahertz carrier here. Because many operators in India, the primary reason why they have gone for 900 LTE by switching off the 3G was precisely this. Their entire voltage traffic been multiplied by many times the moment they started transmitting 4G in 900 megahertz spectrum. Earlier, for example, in Voda or Airtel, they were having 1800 and 2300 4G. The moment they started giving voltage services in 900, switching off of their 3G, their penetration loss was vastly improved. So voltage traffic started happening in 900. So lowering the frequency, or you can't provide IBS everywhere. So adding a macro site if proper demand is there, or best thing you will be have to you are able to afford you have a low frequency this thing you will be able to do that. So these are a few things, but penetration loss as such is a given thing. You can't touch it.
Okay. Thank you.
And it's a customer premises. So
okay, thank you.
This is what precisely the point. In-building solution, even though it is capital intensive, because I know one operator when I was in Pune, One operator, before launching the network in Pune, he had covered around 700 buildings in Pune before they launched the buildings. They had a target of something like 1,000. So they were, that is importance of, because most of the customers, in fact, they stay indoor, and it's only when you're commuting, that is only a fraction of the time of your day you are outside. The quality of service is immensely driven by your indoor coverage. So there is no denying of that. But unfortunately, this is the traffic. Data traffic will increase like this. Your capex more or less follows that. Network cost will it will be following that, but your revenue is somewhat it's flattish. So this is a challenge which everybody has to face ultimately. So IBS, though it's a very beautiful solution, but it is a costly solution. So that's why nowadays, driven by the policymakers of DoT in trying, a lot of things are coming in terms of shared IBS solutions. So if you go to any 5-star hotel, you may have a common IBS, airport, etc. And then many operators are sharing that. So another challenge is to have, like we were dealing with Konkan Railway. A huge number of tunnels are there. Approximately, I think 700 tunnels are there in Konkan Railway. Some of the tunnels are almost 10 kilometers. So there's a huge network connectivity issue there. So now they were always constantly in touch with operators to have the solution. Now I think they have decided to establish this coverage themselves, and they will provide the infrastructure to the operators. So this is a very specialized area where people put this kind of punctured feeder cable, or they will run the fiber across the tunnel, and then they provide from both ends. So generally, the railway administration will be maintaining the physical aspect of the tunnel. The technical managing will be done by the operator. So this in itself is a very interesting topic. Like in Delhi itself, you know, the metro now is covered, but in bigger tunnels, it is a very big challenge. And another point which I want all of you to just get introduced is the various choices of antenna that we have in the network. An antenna is a very crucial part of the RF network, but it is not that talked about. But so many different type of antennas are available, and being a passive element, most of the antennas are unmonitored. So if an antenna is giving poor quality or it has deteriorated, it is very difficult to find out. Of course, that is what I would say, that during the AI kind of algorithms, maybe we'll be able to have some logic to point to the operator that your antenna has gone poor because suddenly your coverage has come down or whatever thing. So there are basically an antenna is defined by its radiation pattern. So the radiation pattern is a very big important input to the planning tool. Generally, the OEM of the antenna will give a soft file copy about its pattern, which will be a direct input to the planning tool. So this particular lobe, whatever shape it is having, that is an input to the planning tool. Then the performance can be, this beam is available, like when you say 65 degree, that is a horizontal plane. In vertical also there is a beam, so that this vertical beam width is something like less than 10 degree, 5 to 10 degrees will be there. And then there are so many different antennas which are to be taken care during the planning process itself. Otherwise, it will be a redundant investment. You have what, for example, if you have a rural coverage. So in urban, what's happening is that you have got multiple sites. So if you have got one null area of one particular antenna, it will be the main lobe of another antenna nearby. So you can have complementary antennas filling up the entire space. But that is not true in a rural kind of a scenario, where suppose you are having only one antenna and the population is not following your antenna pattern. Population is uniformly across the site. So what happens to the null area? They will have poor service. So this kind of a 90-degree kind of an antenna will be useful. But then what will happen? Your gain will be less. Instead of covering so much, you may cover only this much. So these are the kind of different challenges that you may have to tackle. So then what you may do, you may have a 4-sector site, you may have a 6-sector site, you can have 6 sectors of 33 degree. So because one tower you may have making an investment, how to make maximum use out of that, maximum returns out of that, you if good traffic is there in that particular village or whatever tier 3 town, you can think of adding even 6 sectors to a site of 33-degree antenna. So then you have got gain as well as less number of nulls in between. And you have got omni antenna, and 33-degree is also useful for highway applications, then where coverage is, I mean, capacity is not that much required. Omni is kind of an antenna where this picture shows an omni antenna. So it is something like a tube light will be there. So suppose you want to cover a campus and you don't have many sectors, I mean, equipment, that means capacity is not there. So you put an omni antenna, it will give a circular coverage everywhere without having a particular beam pointing a particular area. Then you have got multi-port antennas. Your tower is loaded too much, and then you cannot mount so many antennas. So then you keep one antenna with multiple ports. So multiple antennas in the same form factor of the antenna. That is called multi-port antennas. Then you have got broadband antenna. So broadband antenna means like you cover 2 bands in one shot. You cover 700, 800, and 900 in one antenna. So you have got in a port. So that becomes a kind of a future proof. So same antenna today I may use for 700, tomorrow I may use for 900. Today I may use for 800, tomorrow I may use for my allocation of spectrum has changed to 2300. Still I will be able to use. So this kind of a broadband antenna is also, but of course it will be costly. Dual beam antenna is 2 antennas in one form factor. So you will have slightly different direction. Here multi-port antenna all are in the same direction, but dual beam antenna is very popular because for you, suppose you want to add one more sector, you want to have one more antenna 30-degree difference. Then you replace the antenna with a dual beam antenna. So you are hiring a site from an IP provider, you don't have to pay him anything extra, and there is no tower loading or whatever issue, but you are able to add one more sector to that. Then of course IBS antenna you would have seen in 5-star hotels and airports. Many of them will be hidden, but they are a separate segment in itself. So there are different types of antennas to choose from, which are required at the planning stage. People have to decide what type of antenna will be best suited for the situation. Then antenna parameters, first of all, you have got this dBi, which is a directive gain of the antenna. Then you have got back to front. So back transmission is generally not good, but sometimes people use it for specific purposes. Then you have got front to back ratio. Squint is here in the physical direction, it is pointing towards one point, but actually beam is slightly tilted, which is not supposed to be. So this squint has to be plus minus 1 degree or something like that. Then symmetry. Suppose you have got 2 beams, dual beam antenna. Both have to be similar. It cannot be different. You have got multiple beams from the same antenna, but its beams have to be similar. It cannot be. It should be symmetric. Then cross polar ratio. You have cross polar antennas now, horizontal and vertical polarization. So both should be having that independence. So whatever horizontal transmission which you are doing, that component should be at least say 25 dB below that in the other polarization. So that kind of a differentiation has to be maintained. So there are many. So good quality antenna, as I said, is very essential. So this QA testing of this is very important. You get proper quality of the antenna is an investment for life. Then you have got a facility for down tilting. It can be electrical or mechanical. So when you nowadays all electrical tilt is coming by phase difference, they manage the tilt, and then you have got MIMO applications and diversity. And so antenna itself is a big topic. So any RF planner has to have a very good knowledge of antenna to have a proper. So just I want to introduce, you will be hearing many things like a 2T 2R, 44R, 88R, 640, 64R. What are these T? So T is a transmission. So suppose you have got a dual polarized antenna. So it will be having basically 2 ports. So both the ports we can use for transmitting. So then it becomes 2T like this we are seeing here, and you can use both of them for receiving also. So if you use it like that by having a diplexer, you use transmit in both the ports and receive in both the ports, then you have got a 2T 2R kind of a configuration. Like this is generally not used. You are having a separate antenna for transmission, separate antenna for reception, so that to avoid diplexer. that is not used. So here, just like a 2G and 3G, we have got one transmitter and two reception. So from the mobile, we are able to receive in two antennas for better coverage, but transmitter is a costly component, so we have got single transmitter. So this is a 1T 2R kind of a concept, 1T 2R. So that is popular up to 3G, but in 4G we start with 2T 2R and 44R. So 44R, if you want to have with a normal this type of antenna, you need to have two antennas here. Otherwise, you have to separately order an antenna with 4 ports. So this, I hope this concept of 2T 2R, 44R is somewhat clear from this. So okay, so let us start. I mean, we have discussed this point. Marketing inputs are very important for to plan how many capacities to be planned. That is the existing traffic from your OMCR or EMS, how much congestion is there. So coverage goals reported from the marketing or call centers. So we have to fill that. And demographic data, that means that how much population is in every place and what market share you are trying to achieve. So today your market share is, let's say 25%, I want to increase to 35% after 1 year, 2 years. So you need to have that kind of a capacity and coverage kind of a thing. If population, then only you can coverage. So this kind of objects are basically behind in an RF planner. Then he goes about planning this one. And these are the some terminologies you may be familiar. Frequency reuse, of course, in 3G, 4G, and 5G, every spot is reused in every other sector. In using by other factors only we are avoiding the clash. Whereas in 2G, we were having a reuse concept. So there we had 3x3 or 4x3 or 5x3. That means that every third site will reuse this green will be using every third site. So that is 3x3. If you are reusing every fifth site, then we will be saying that 5x3. So like that. So this is the kind of concept which is being used. And BCCH and hopping channels, that is also available in. I will not spend time on that because 2G is already obsolete. MIO and HSN is also concept of 2G. If anybody wants, we can ask during discussion. So we can discuss that. And sectorization. So this is a very interesting topic because, as I said, site is a very big investment. So any operator will like to take maximum return on a given investment. You have already constructed the tower, your OPEX and the CAPEX on infra is already fixed. So by adding sectors, if you can increase the revenue from the site, that's a very big choice that is available to the operator. So multi-band, of course, the kind of carrier aggregation which we have discussed. So during the course of our next 1 month, if anybody is having a doubt, we can discuss that. There are within the same band, if adjacent spots are there, no carrier aggregation is required, we can simply extend the spectrum. If the same band, if you are having different spots and carrier aggregation funda will come, so then during a CA you will be able to visualize that as a single spectrum available. If it is a multiple different band, for example 2300 and 2600, then also the technology permits the combination as a carrier aggregation. The carrier aggregation is a concept which is derived from the 2G. 2G, when it was getting evolved, when before the 3G came, people wanted to combine two carriers, and combined spectrum was supposed to be given to the customer. So that technology was called as evolved edge, because ultimately you had only 8 time slots in a 2G. So theoretically you are hitting the ceiling at 8 time slot. Of course, all 8 cannot be given because uplink and downlink both are required. So ultimately you could give only 4 or 5 for it. So the technology came to combine the second carrier. And so ultimately 2G could achieve a 2 Mbps, but this did not take off because by the time 3G came. So 3G when evolved in release 8 up to 8, it evolved, then release 9 came. So release 8, 4G also came, and 3G also was evolving. Then the dual carrier concept in 3G came, when you can combine 2 carriers and give a throughput of say 56 Mbps in 3G. But this again did not take off in terms of handset ecosystem because by the time 4G came. So in 4G, this was there from the beginning itself. so almost at the beginning itself, because from I think list 10 onwards, carrier aggregation funda came. So that is how the 4G objectives of 300 Mbps and all could be achieved by combining this one, because maximum LTE carrier bandwidth was 20 megahertz. So then you have to combine 5 such carriers to make it 100, and then you could achieve the objectives of 4G of 300 Mbps, 400 Mbps, and what people are achieving by combining the carriers. So this is the funda of carrier aggregation. Of course, India is a spectrum scarce country. Now it's improving with the arrival of high band spectrum and all, and less number of operators. So things will become much better. So these are handling this multiple spectrum itself is a challenge. That is why the concept of service-based handover. If somebody is asking for a voice, then okay, let me give in the lower spectrum. If he is asking for lower technology, suppose 2G and 3G both are working, or 2G and 4G both are working, and if a customer is asking for a voice this thing, and voice resources are freely available, then he will be given a voice itself. And subsequently, if but lot of data demand is there, and you will be able to push some voice customer from a higher band to lower band also, which is called a service-based handover, so that more resources are available in a data-friendly carrier, data-friendly technology, and data services are provided to most of the maximum customers in 4G, and voice services are given in 2G. So this kind of techniques are evolved in system for traffic management. And then of course, carrier aggregation, other things are there. And carrier aggregation is also uplink and downlink is generally it comes initially in the downlink only. Then uplink also carrier aggregation technologies are coming, and again between TDD and FDD, that combination itself is further evolving. So there are many layers of complexity in carrier aggregation. And higher order MIMO. So MIMO is a very interesting technology. So I think another 10 minutes I will take. I don't want to stretch much. Anyway, we have much more sessions to discuss. But MIMO, one interesting aspect of MIMO is that generally what is happening is that in one beam, when you have one small area of the customers are only getting the best signal. Remaining all customers are getting much less directive gain. This is a very big aspect. So, and then there you have got a lot of area where, and one customer is, suppose one spectrum is given to one customer, but radiation is happening in all the areas. So power in fact is being wasted, so to say. So when you have 64 beams coming from the same antenna and using beam forming concept and all, the one customer is being served with maximum gain. That is one interesting aspect of massive MIMO. Secondly, his energy is concentrated there only. It is not unnecessarily wasted in other areas. So there, this higher order MIMO is actually a very revolutionary thing which is happening. That is one aspect. So here you have got a massive MIMO system. Then you will get different beams for a customer who is in a multi-story building in the top floor, and for different floors. So these things will not interfere. So earlier this power was getting distributed to the entire environment, whereas now it will get concentrated towards a needy fellow. So it's much more efficient way of using. So massive MIMO, I feel, is a very interesting technology, not only from a technological perspective, but in better utilization of RF energy in a very better way, and that too actually the energy per bit efficiency in 5G is also improved because of this particular aspect. And coordinated multipoint is also another interesting technology. Like when there are two ways of looking at it. One is between the two different sectors. One UE is getting signal from two different sectors. Both are utilized for giving service to him. Earlier it was being seen as a neighbor. But now, if you are able to see that also as a resource, combine both of them and use both the signals coming from the handset to give him a combined experience that will improve his experience. So So the radiation of the handset is much better utilized using both antennas of the base station. So this is something which is within the cell. Now you just think that he is also able to, because he is having an omnidirectional antenna, the UV, and in an urban environment, his signal is reaching multiple towers also. So if you are able to combine all the signals coming from the UV and combine at the core network level, then it's a much more efficient way of utilizing. So this is the concept of coordinated multipoint. Yeah, multiple radiations go to a different sector of the same base station or to multiple base stations are effectively combined to give a much better throughput experience for the customer. Is a coordinated multipoint funda, but the reverse side of it is that if you want to coordinate between multiple base stations, then backhauling is required in much heavier way. So that is once fiberization is improved, maybe this technology will be much better. This is one point. So actually another aspect of this is that earlier when you are in a border, this fellow is supposed to be interferer. So now he becomes a fruitful signal to him. Earlier when we are moving away from A station to B station, this fellow is suppose a neighbor or interferer, there is of no value to him. So the cell edge performance of a particular area, cell edge performance is vastly improved with COMP. So that is a very key aspect of COMP. So for improving cell edge experience. So these are the various tools available. You all know planning tool, drive test tool process. So we will like to touch many of these tools during our session. Maybe SON is not being, we will not be covering because that will be too much for this thing. But most of the key aspects will be covered. And later on, hopefully, whenever we have we acquire a lab here in NTA, we will be able to do that. And this I will not take much time because it is taking time. The cellular propagation models are multiple models are there. Ultimately, the one aspect which we saw in our link budget is the free space loss. So free space loss cannot be uniform everywhere, you know. Even in a city environment, in a watery cluster, in a forest, in a desert, in a sea. Now, I still remember during the last decade, initial 2G days, I was assigned the task of confirming the 2G. The 2G technology says that it can cover, I think, up to 112 kilometers or so. So we were doing one testing from Lakshadweep, Kavaratti Island. We were traveling in a ship. I think Bharat, there are 2 ships flying to. So we were traveling and we could hold the call up to something like 58 kilometers. So because it is sea, there is no stop. It is only at curvature which is stopping the limit. So different terrain and different clutters, the coverage is different. So unless you define a propagation model which will suit different terrain and different clutter, you will not be able to assess the coverage. And there are different types. Is a typo. There are different types like deterministic means it's simply driven by a formula. For example, it's basically derived out of a law of physics, that fixed this thing. Empirical is another model like Okumura-Hata and other things. Like people have done large number of measurements, and then they arrive at certain coefficients and big formula, and that is called an empirical based thing. And then we have got a combination of both, where you have got a formula, but then you actually tweak with the coefficients of that formula during the model tuning process. So we'll touch what is model tuning also. With that, we'll be able to have, for example, you go to a state of say Maharashtra. So the entire state of Maharashtra is not similar. You may have very urban cluster in Pune city. You may have very hilly cluster in say Konkan area, and then you have got very flat terrain in say Latur area or somewhere. So these are different area. So you should not be able to use the same formula everywhere. So different coefficients will be used in different areas in order to be more accurate. So there are many models available historically, and every planning tool also will be finalizing some kind of this thing which can be tuned during the process of model tuning. So the different models are also different from like this Okumura-Hata model. He had finalized Institute of Tokyo. So like I am saying, within the same state or within the same country, depending upon the location, we may have to tune. Different frequency ranges. Some of the models are suitable only for frequencies less than 1 GHz. Some models are tuned for up to 2 GHz. So like that, now MM wave will require a different kind of an understanding. So different clutter. So that's why we need to have model tuning. So in the model tuning, what you do is that you do a continuous wave drive testing. So you have got a transmitter which transmit at the mid frequency of say 1 GHz or 900 this thing, and then you have a GPS and you have got a GIS system. Then you receive. So with this, you validate your model, and then you can finalize your coefficients of your model. But this, of course, is nowadays being done using the drive test result itself. The drive test input, if you give to the intelligent planning tool, they will be able to tell you and do the iterations and give you the coefficients. And of course, now mobile technology is not a new thing in India. So everybody would have done the tuning long back and would have finalized the coefficients many times. So you end up straight away inheriting these coefficients and do that. So you have to do extensively covering all the different sites, etc. So that this CW process is finally the K values, the coefficient values ultimately should result when you compare between the predicted values and the actual values done using a drive test. The mean error should be minimum and the standard deviation also should be very less. Less than say 7 or 8 dB standard deviation should be okay, and this should be plus minus 1 dB kind of a thing should be there in the mean error, not the error, the particular one. Mean error should be very close. So with this, you give a lot of inputs to the planning tool. So you have got a planning tool, for example, of an atoll. So first of all, in the planning tool, you have got the map data, you got the height files, the average mean sea level data, which is a fundamental requirement. So this is a digital map that you purchase from many suppliers are there in India, like RMSI, or I think many people are there, Lepton, etc. So you operators purchase the map data from them. You have got the clutter data. Clutter data, I mean, like there are 17, 18 different clutters, like airport is one clutter, vegetation is another clutter, water bodies is another clutter, and urban is another clutter. So like the different clutter data is very important. And then you can define the margins, your fade margin, etc. Clutter-wise also, because urban clutter you may have phosphate margin of different value. So this tuning on this input is required. Then you have got what is called a vector file. Vector file means your road details, your highways, your coastlines, your river lines. These kind of lines are called the vector file. So that will help you to identify the place. Then latest thing is the building files. So building keeps on evolving. So latest building files are required, particularly for planning with the urban kind of a vegetation data. Then traffic maps. This will come from existing your systems. You will get the existing map, your interference values. Then of course propagation model, your configuration of your what configuration you want to do, your 3 sector, 4 sector, what type of antenna that files you have to equipment configuration, what kind of frequency you have, what kind of bandwidth you have. All those inputs are good. Anyway, I will not deal because you have got sessions from various stakeholders, including OEM. So just I want to give an overview of what all things are going into a planning tool to do the RF planning. So then you define what TDD, your ratio, the TDD numerology, that is suppose it is 5G, what band part that you're using, synchronous block that you're using. For example, 2G, you can think of giving how many BCJ time slots you want to give. So if it is in a location area boundary, you may like to give more for the signaling, things like that. What are bands you want to give, your carrier definitions, whether you're using whatever antenna system you're using. So all these inputs are required, including your interference, this thing, everything is to be inputted into the planning tool. Then only the more accurate data you give to the planning tool, that accurate output you have. Then our output of the planning tool you can have in 2 different ways. One is the static one. This gives a snapshot of your coverage. So what is the signal level that you have in different places? So what is the best signal and what is the server? Which site is serving this area? So good and bad coverage areas can be identified with this one. So you can use different bands for different coverages, and then you ascertain what kind of so you can play around with that. So I will put sites. I got money for 10 sites. So whether by putting the 10 sites I'm covering the required places or not. So you tweak, and you know the marketing demands you need to place in certain clusters. There are certain VAP areas you have to cover. So you try to position your the sites in various positions, and maybe a particular one highway, your airport to city center highway has to be covered perfectly, but that is getting covered. So this is a very important. So from this plan, you arrive at something like a nominal site plan. After once that nominal site plan is done, then those nominals or the lat long of the location is shared with the field team to acquire the site. So they will go and acquire the site, maybe slightly here and there. They will exactly share the lat long of that site back to the planner. They will say that, okay, I'm getting the site. Is it okay? Is it too much of a compromise from your nominal? And then he will analyze and say, okay, this is okay. This will do the job. So then they go ahead and acquire. So this RF planner has got a job, starting with all the input traffic inputs and other inputs that he has got. Then he fixes a nominal based on various considerations that I have told, like capex or whatever, and coverage objectives, etc. Fix a nominal plan you make. Then you share for acquisition team, and acquisition team comes back with tentative locations. And the tentative locations exact lat long is fed with the planning tool, and the planner confirms. So then with that finalized locations, then you can simulate the coverage by loading the traffic. So Monte Carlo is actually a probability algorithm. Monte Carlo means, you know, there is a gambling kind of a place, I think. So from that, this name has come. So Monte Carlo is a way of throwing the traffic in the UEs or the handsets are distributed in a certain way. Again, it is changed and again put in different ways. So many iterations of the locations of the UEs are done on the plot. And then after doing large number of iterations, you do 100 times, 200 times, like that. More time, it will take more time, that's all. Then you arrive at every aspect of that. Who is serving, what will be the downlink barrel of a particular site. So it gives entire performance of the traffic behavior is simulated, and your final maps interference, all the maps are generated after this one. So you, in the detailed presentations, you can ask questions on that. I'm sure the OEMs will give more details of this kind of simulations. This anyway, it's a common knowledge. In one you proper site location, I will not, because site is an investment for a lifetime. So you go to the site, you go to the rooftop and look at the place. This is a site I have to acquire, and then you find that one site is totally blocked by a hill. So one investment, 25% investment is blocked. So next 20 years we are going to live at least with this site. So fruitful utilization of all the sectors that you are planning. All the sectors should be able to give you, say, 20 Erlang and 100 GB traffic in a 4G site. That is your bread and butter of the operator. That is the return of investment of that particular site. So you go to the site either on the tool or physically and judge from there that every site is every sector is giving the returns that it is supposed to. So like I said, told hilltop sites are very attractive initially, but it will give a lot of interference. Whereas if you put in the valley, it is future proof. There will be natural hindrances, you will never overshoot. So this kind of, and of course microwave line of sight will be difficult. So many aspects are there for sighting. All of you are from the field. I know I did not tell you more about this. So radio criteria is that you need to have good view. The main beam direction, as I told you, the traffic you should be able to get, and there should not be any obstacle. And utilization of all sectors with the traffic potential is required. And if you are planning a micro link, then its line of sight is also very important. So otherwise, I have connectivity is required. So there are many criteria from the radio angle, And then from a physical angle, of course, space for equipment and power supply, availability, access, rental cost should be affordable. Local body, whether they are likely to give, if it is school nearby, they may not give. So many issues are there. So it should be a gettable site, and it should be an implementable site. So gettability and implementability are very important, and that also has to be considered along with the radio aspects. And nowadays, radio planning, very good tools are coming. Basically, you give input of your current network to that, and then you load the traffic onto that, the existing traffic. But the main important thing is that the information regarding the current network, including the location, lat long, should be precise. Orientation of the tower, it is very easy that you can give, but if you look at an antenna from the top, it is very difficult to see whether it is 20 degrees from the true north or 30 degrees from the true north. So it requires specialized tools, in fact, to judge whether this orientation will be correctly given. So the height of the antenna, so that itself is very difficult because building height is there. So, and on top of that, you have got the tower height. So correct antenna height and orientation and tilt. Tilt nowadays it is electrical tilt. So you will not know, antenna will be vertical, but there will be adjustment at the bottom which will give how much, whether it's 4-degree tilt or 5-degree tilt. So the information that is given into the tool is very important. If it is cleaned and given correctly, that is, it is 80% of the job is done. Then from the network, you give the configuration and the airline traffic of the network. And thirdly, the interference value from the network. So that's a very important input. All these things are given, then you run the automatic, then the network itself will give the what should be the BCCH of every signal, or what should the carrier, and what should the different planning parameters it will give the output. So you keep on doing that iteration, you do the type testing afterwards. When mistakes are there, then you correct it. So this you can further learn from various people who are going to give the presentation. But this is a beautiful development which has happened in the last 5-6 years. This has really helped improve the quality of the network. At the end of the day, you have got, this is my last slide, you have got a lot of flexibility to optimize and develop your network. You can use full rate, half rate to increase the capacity. You can use power control. You can use discontinuous transmission to reduce the noise. You can use macro underlay overlay network. You can use multiple spectrum cells, because that itself is an investment. Then you can use AMR to improve the traffic. Then you can tweak the cell parameter, your handover threshold, your every parameter in the GSM or the 3GPP family can be tweaked. And then you can use dual mode sites. Frequency changes can be done, fine-tuning of the antenna orientation and tilt, adding TRX, adding carriers, sectorization, as I said, 4 sector, 5th sector, repeaters, pre-amplifier. Pre-amplifier means tower mounted amplifier, TMA, many names are there, LNA. So the tower, you, like I was saying, suppose you cover the coastline. There was a demand from the west coast that the shipping, when people, fishermen have to be covered. So then actually the uplink will be a problem. So when you want to serve the increase the uplink coverage, which is the limiting link, so-called limiting link, then you need to boost the uplink. For that, you can put on the LNA at the tower top to boost the uplink. So this will be able to extend the coverage, as I said, to 50-60 kilometers by doing this. So it's again, it will add to the capex. Then micro IPS, then cell splitting. If nothing is happening, then you add one more base station. So in terms of this axis, in terms of cost and effort. So last choice is most capex sensitivity involved is the capex sensitive is the cell adding. Most PCS is the parametric optimization that you can do. So from this end to this end, a lot of money is involved, and the effect is also, of course, adding this micro cell and all the different effect that will be there. So these are the so many choices are in front of the implementation engineer or the planner or whatever operator, but using them positively in terms of balancing capex and the effect, the decision has to be done. So this, I hope I have only an overview of the various aspects of planning part of mobile networks. So now we can take a few questions. Otherwise, it's going to be a continuous interaction for next few weeks. We will always be there, myself, Ashok, and Sunit, along with you, handholding you. But it will be very interesting to listen from all of you because all of you represent various units. We have got limited knowledge in many areas. So during this interaction, we can actually enhance our knowledge set also. So let us, forum is open. Let us have some discussion.
So any question from anyone? Sir, it looks like that it's a lunch time. Yeah. So, sir, thank you very much, sir, for this marathon session. So you took almost 2 hours, sir. So 1 hour 45 minutes to be precise, and all aspects of RF you have covered, sir. So it is a kind of a summary of what all the sessions will be coming in coming days, sir. So thank you very much for such a nice session. And let me tell to all the participants that the PowerPoint presentations in a PDF form will be uploaded to the Teams in the class material section, so you can access and download and use that. Secondly, the recording of this session will also be available onto the team, and we'll also try to upload this on NTI-PRIT YouTube channel so that you can access anywhere, anytime without need to even log into Teams. So with that, perhaps we have come to the end of the session, sir. So thank you very much. And let me tell you about the tomorrow's session. So tomorrow, although we have said that every day we'll have 1 hour session at 11 o'clock, but the topic itself is very, very vast. We understood today itself that sir took almost 2 hours and he briefly touched those points, right? So although we have scheduled it for 1 hour, so tomorrow 11 to 12, 1 hour session is by team of expert team from the Ericsson. So please do join tomorrow. And in the second half also, there is an extra session, you can say, that is from Aircom. So there are 2 sessions tomorrow. So we will try to cover, and the topic is again RF planning. So please be present tomorrow, both the sessions. Please try, and in case you have any urgent meeting or urgent office work or personal work, and if you miss, we will make available the recording of the same. So thank you very much for today's session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Let's meet tomorrow. Thank you.